is the biggest platform and the biggest network for entrepreneurs all over the world. If you haven't been to any of our events, be sure to come to our next one. And we love making friends, we love helping other people, and we love connecting with some of the most amazing entrepreneurs from within the city.
Startup Grind is really great. It's a networking event where you meet people who have made an impact in the world of entrepreneurship.
Startup Grind is the first time I've came. I've seen it a couple of times, but from what I've seen, it looks like a nice little networking event where you can meet new people.
Welcome to Startup Grind Johannesburg. I'm very excited. I'm looking forward to having a conversation with you because I've known you for the longest time. We've known each other for the longest time. And for us to now sit down and have a chat about what has been happening, your journey, I'm actually very excited for that. So for those who don't know your journey and where you come from, normally at Startup Grind we start with where you were born, where you grew up, just so we can understand you better. Who's Mark and where did you grow up?
Awesome. Well, first of all, thank you so much to all of you for making it through. I really do appreciate it. It's exciting to have you guys here. I mean, first and foremost, I should say that I'm an absolute lover of entrepreneurship. I'm an entrepreneur. So I've been coming to these events for quite some time myself. I just love learning from other people. Stands very much where I'm at. To go back, I'm 33 years old and I was born in Johannesburg. I'm born and bred here, specifically in the south of Johannesburg.
Yes,
that's the so that's the other side of town. Yeah, I mean, there's some really good things and bad things that come from that place, but I'm very proud of it. And the long story short is that it's been a weird but now fun journey the whole way through. I found myself being in school and doing very well at school, but always hating school, hating the process. And I think it always came down to the formal education system doesn't really like the question why. Why are we doing it this way? It never really has. And in fact, I want to start by saying that my bugbear isn't the formal education system at all. Just that when I was, you look at something and you're like, this doesn't make sense. Shouldn't we do it like this? Or shut up. This is the way we do it. And leave it like that. So that was kind of my introduction to schooling. I was very lucky. My father's actually here in the crowd tonight. Wow. Yeah. Good old Tony Sham. I've always been very lucky to have a solid upbringing from a father and mother, but specifically because my dad was an entrepreneur. I always say that one of the biggest advantages you have when someone close to you is an entrepreneur is that they don't tell you to go the route of entrepreneurship. It's that you see that it's possible. And that makes a really, really big difference. So my dad started he went into business full-time for himself in 1991. And so I was 7 years old. So you can imagine I was brought up in an environment where I saw that entrepreneurship is a thing and it's to be done. And so really that was it from there. I always excelled in school. I did well in sports. I was on average, but I just never really was weird. I never fitted in there. Until I got kicked out of school in my matric year. It was quite a bizarre situation to go through because I was 6 months away from getting a scholarship opportunity to go to California. And there were two problems with it. One, I had no clue what I was going to study, and that's probably the biggest frustration, is that at 18 you're kind of meant to have your map sorted out. In fact, younger than 18, because you're meant to have picked your subjects by 16 to know what you want to do by 18, and you have to have it all figured out. And so I had this opportunity to go to California to study, but I didn't know what I was going to study, and then I got into the only fight I've ever gotten into in my life. I'm the worst Lebanese of my kind, I'm Lebanese, to add to the story. So I never got into a fight until one fateful day in the trick. I got kicked out of school. I threw my whole life out, because suddenly I went from having what I thought was things figured out to no clue what I was going to do. And ironically, from that day, it really pushed me into entrepreneurship.
Wow. What was your first, so you got kicked out of school, and then what? What did you do? Did you stay at home? Did you try to get a job?
Well, as my dad would attest, he's never had to tell me to do anything. I was born hyperactive. So, it's always, I think that's part of the lack was watching him. I was always scheming with something. There was always an idea. If you listen to most entrepreneurs' journeys, you always hear that they were selling something at school or they were trying something out. And I think the basis for entrepreneurship is really that sometimes, I think entrepreneurs are born and made, which I'll get into later, but in the case where you're just born like that, you're constantly looking at something and thinking, but surely there's a better way to do it. So if you're doing that, then you can relate to that, right? And that was kind of me pre being kicked out of school. So when I got kicked out, I was kind of like, well, this is interesting. I technically should have gone back to school and just finished up a year in another system, but I'd already fallen out of love with the system, and so I did a handful of things. I'm a little bit like a car guard on the side of the road that can sell you everything. I'm really, swear to God, if there's something out there, I've sold it, serviced it, something.
You've always been an aggressive seller like that.
I've just always been a guy who thought I could do it better, which for the most part didn't work out, but I thought I could.
So what was your first business?
It wasn't really a business, but one of the things I did when I was a kid with my dad is that I used to play temp bowling. It was something that he took up, and I did it more to go play video games at the arcade, and then one night the electricity went out and I started doing it with him. It was a way that we got to spend a bit of time together. So I got into this, and one of the first things I did was I made it into the senior national team for bowling, of all things. But don't mock it, because it took me around the world. It took me to some interesting places before I was 18 years old. So I got to see the world from about 13 to 18. I'd been to about 10 different countries. But like most small sports, it was very, it was rife with politics and all sorts of other crap. So one day I just got so frustrated with the sport that I loved so much that they were just messing up. And I remember saying to the president of the association then, "You're doing a really shit job. Like, you're really killing the sport, this thing that I love." And he was like, "Well, if you could do it better, then do it." And as my dad will attest, I came home and that was all that I needed. So I started a temp bowling tournament. I got it televised on Super Sport. I did this whole thing, and then at the end of the tournament I was like, "There you go." There. What had happened was that there was a guy named Guy, literally, who owned a whole bunch of bowling centres, so saw that I ran this tournament and said, "Don't you want to come work for me? Like, I'd love for you to replicate what you do there." I also learned that I'm not meant to work for Guy in that process, but the lessons were invaluable.
So, and then now, didn't you ever feel like you were missing out on school, on formal education? Because I mean, at that age, we're not taking the mark now, who you are now and what you believe now. Because like, you grew up in an era where everyone would obviously say, you need to go to school, you need to get a degree, you need to finish matric.
Yeah.
You know? Didn't you feel like you were missing out on school at that time?
Yeah, the short answer is that my late teens and early 20s were the most fun, exciting, and horrible time of my life. It is true. You're young, you're egotistical, and you're impressionable. So you're looking at other people studying, getting out of varsity, doing well, earning more money. Worst of all, it seems that they've got it figured out, and you have no clue. And that's partially what pushed me to trying a million different things. It wasn't that someone told me to do that, it was like trying to figure it out. But nothing could really stick, which made me feel worse because people would tell me that I had no staying power. So I did. I felt like a redheaded stepchild, to be honest with you, that whole way through. But I guess the thing that I was lucky with, that I was given, I didn't really work for this, was I was given this sheer excitement for when something new came along, and like eternal, like, well, what happens if we can do this, and what happens if we can make that work? You know, when you kind of got that in you, that's kind of what kept it going. But yeah, my only saving grace was that I was a real social guy. And to give this context is that one of the things I did was I started jolling. I went out to a nightclub once and I was like, we could definitely do this better. It's quite strange because I'm not joking, I said it, I started running, from about an early age I started running nightclubs, nightclub events. So I went from like running these bowling tournaments to always having a background in marketing to running these nightclub events, and I went from making no money to making a lot of money in 6 months. And then I didn't feel so out, you know. Then everybody, at that age, I was into the perfect profession. Yeah. You want to be in nightclub events at 22, let me tell you. That'll get you far.
Yeah. And the lessons that you picked up from, because I mean, I can imagine you were so young. I'm sure you were making a whole lot of mistakes. How did you get out to be better? What were some of the lessons that you took away from? Because I mean, when you're starting out, we all winning it, all in the beginning. And at that age, how did you get out of it?
So let me give you a quick timeline. You got kicked out of school. I did all sorts of random things. I worked with my dad for a bit, then I realized that that wasn't, at the time he wasn't doing marketing like he does now. He was doing statistical analysis. That wasn't for me. Then ran bowling tournaments, then worked there, then left there, then started running nightclub events, then decided to start an online fragrance store. Got it up, got it running quite well.
Fragrance store, when was this?
This was 2008, 10 years ago. So I was running nightclub events, running this at the same time. Then the online fragrance store did well, then I lent a whole bunch of money to open up a physical retail store because my suppliers held me to ransom. That's sometimes what big corporates will do to you. And then I opened up a big retail store. I had no clue what retail was about, and in under a year the business went bang. So now I was R1 million in debt at 24. I didn't know what to do. So then, but I used social media very heavily at the beginning to market the online fragrance store. So then to get out of that, I was like, maybe I should put together a one-day workshop teaching businesses about social media, because a lot of people already started to ask me. So I couldn't find anybody to do the talk. And that's when my dad, you'll notice there's a common denominator there, said to me one day, well, why don't you do the course? You're looking to market it, someone else doing the talk. Why don't you do it? There's no social media school that you can go to. So what makes one person more qualified to do it than the other? So out of like sheer desperation and being R1 million in debt, I did the only thing that made sense. I booked an overseas holiday on my credit card. I did that because I was under severe pressure, and I only think back to it now. It was a horrible time in life. You don't want to do that. But why I booked it was because a friend of mine came to me and said, I've got this really cheap trip. We're doing it at cost. We flight center, 10 grand, all inclusive, everything. And I was like, I need to get away. I just need to figure out something. And the only thing I wasn't in debt with was my credit card, because I really didn't go do it. So obviously I did the next logical thing. I booked it, and long story short, when I was there, I realized, what's the worst that can happen? Come home, create a payment plan, get this thing going. Started the social media course. The thing blew up. I suddenly went from being R1 million in debt to being able to travel around the country teaching businesses about social media. I would get there, and people would say to me, oh, this is great that we've learned this, but would you do it for us? So I started an agency, and that's how I got into direct marketing and marketing. Then the agency did really well, too well. It took all my life, it took all my time, and then 3 years ago I realized I don't want to help more companies sell shit cheese. And so this is basically, I used the marketing business. Yeah, it's funny. So when the marketing business, once I paid my debt off and once the marketing business started to do really well, then I started to have surplus cash. And my feeling was, don't sit on the cash. I never want to be in that position again. So I thought I was Richard Branson at 25. The lesson here is never start a whole bunch of businesses all at the same time. Start one, make that work, because they all require in massive inertia. I started a gym, I had a bar, so that was my joke. I used to have a bar and a gym. I could get you fitter during the week and then really harm you on weekends. I started a water dispensing company. Most of these did quite well. I had 2 franchise takeaway things. I was making quite a bit of money. So up until about 4 or 5 years ago, I suddenly had about 10 different businesses. Running all those different businesses taught me the biggest lessons, including everything I don't actually want to do. So that's kind of how I eventually got to the place where now I again, on my 30th birthday, I gave myself a present. I traveled to Amsterdam and Ibiza, as 30-year-olds do. Mm-hmm. And in the process of destroying myself at Joel's, I realized I enjoy marketing, but this is not what I'm built to do.
Yeah, yeah.
But what I'd recognized through this entire process, which is what brings us here, is that at every point in time that I'd run these businesses and got them off the ground, I had immersed myself into that world by going online and teaching myself everything there is to know, then coming back and practicing, then learn, apply, like this whole process.
Yes.
But for the first time, we have all this information sitting on the internet. So every industry that I went into, I mean, I'm lying when I say most of them didn't work. Most of them did work, and then I offloaded them, and they weren't huge successes. They always look bigger than they were. That's a marketing trick. Especially social media. That's what it does well, is it can make something look bigger when it's not.
Yeah.
But the point being is, most of these businesses I learned by doing this, and something in me said, I don't actually want to do that, but I actually really want to help people understand the process that I've been through, which is how to learn how to learn. And once that idea stuck, I found it very difficult to give my heart to all the other businesses.
Was that the Beth of Suits and Sneakers? Sorry for using my name.
Yeah, the Beth.
That was
Was that
the
the beginning of Susan Sneakers?
Yes.
If
Yeah,
it
yeah.
makes you feel better.
I was overseas and I was sitting there, and I've always believed that travel is the greatest form of education. I've got a saying. In fact, I've got a really big tattoo on my forearm, on my left forearm, that kind of resembles this idea of travel. You can always make more money, but you can't get back time. There's something about travel, right? Because tonight, let's say today, you're leaving tonight for overseas, but today you're here, you're driving on South African roads, you're talking to South Africa, like it works a certain way. You literally pop down the mole hole and you wake up tomorrow morning in a new airport. People speak different, they drive on the different side of the road. The whole world is different. If you want an education of how your perspective is just one perspective, and the way you do things and the way we do things here is just one of the millions of ways that you can do it.
Yeah.
Traveling kind of gives that to you. So here I am overseas, just seeing how well developed Amsterdam in the Netherlands is. And I remember thinking, I love my country and I want this back home. I want to bring more of this back home. And Amsterdam and Johannesburg are not similar at all. But more important, economically, they operate very differently. There's a high sense of equality in the European nations. There's minimum wage. There's access to quality education. Not in South Africa. In South Africa, we have the most unequal society in the world. We have the biggest gap between rich and poor. We tell people in townships that they can change their life, but they need access to hundreds of thousands of rands to go and get educated.
Yeah.
The whole system's broken.
Yeah.
When that whole dawned on me, like that was the birth of, that's a problem I want to fix. Not helping more companies. I was doing some work with a big name brand, and I just realized I don't want to help these companies sell more cheese. I want to go home and solve a real problem.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was it.
That was. And now, Susan Sneakers, the name. Why? Why Susan Sneakers?
That's my favorite part. It's actually simple. So I come back to think, like, how do I help people? I don't know, how many of you watch TED Talks ever? Yeah, I think like TED Talks are like the staple for entrepreneurs, right? So I watched a whole bunch of TED Talks. In fact, the very first one I ever watched was Do Schools Kill Creativity by Ken Robinson. I say, if you've watched it, cool, go watch it again. And if you haven't, watch it over and over and over. Two things. I woke up and I was like, wow, TED, this is incredible. And then I watched more and more and more of them. And then I came up with this idea of a 90-day TED Talk challenge. I stand by this today. If you committed to watching one TED Talk each day for the next 90 days, you'll be a different human being after those 90 days.
I can attest to that.
So that was like the basis of informal education. That's how I've helped myself, and I've watched a lot of successful entrepreneurs educate themselves informally. That's how it started. I wanted to help more people do that. But then once I got into this realization that education is broken, South Africa is broken because of the inequality levels, because of our past history, because of access to education or the lack thereof. And I looked at the future of education and I realized that around the world, not just South Africa, that in order to fix this problem, it can't be done with the traditional means that we're using. So this name comes from the idea that in the future, I believe that education will be a blend or a meld between formal and informal education, suits and sneakers. But also the brander, the marketing me, knew that if I called it ABC training, I'd just be like everybody else. So the ring of suits and sneakers had something to it. And I stand by it today. The future is a blend between formal and informal, face-to-face, online. This mesh between suits and sneakers. You have to be able to wear both. And this trick is knowing when to use which.
Yeah.
That's really what we stand for.
Wow. Okay, that's amazing, Mark. Listen, can we have a few questions from the floor? And then we're going to talk about what keeps Susan Sneakers going. And obviously your first time when you hosted the biggest event. You had about 500 people attending the event, right? Your first big conference, right?
The first event was on the 23rd of July, 2015, at a church, and we had 1,000 people.
1,000 people. The first event, Mark.
Yeah.
Who
But can I give a cheat? I mean, we're all entrepreneurs. Can I give you the cheat mechanism?
Yeah. Please.
What I did was...
I think I'm gonna need it.
It sounds bigger than what it was, because what I did was I created a value point.
Okay.
It's $300 to attend. I told you that there were going to be 4 speakers on the night. It's going to be like a TED Talk for South Africa. The topics are going to be varied. So you're going to come and listen to a variety, and the talks will be recorded and they'll be placed online after. So we created a value, and we started marketing it via all the channels that we have, social media, direct marketing. But then I underhandedly went to a whole bunch of businesses, and business people that I knew had to be there. And I went to them and I'd say, look, we're running this event, this is what it costs, but I'd love to have you there for you to see. I've never worked harder on an event than that first event. So I got about 400 people paying, 1,300 people registered otherwise, and on the night 1,000 people pitched. Of course, the public doesn't know that. Yeah. And it's none of their business, to be honest with you. You got 1,000 people there, and if you're playing the long game, it's worth every cent to have those people there. I lost 20, 30 grand on the event. I saw it as investing in the event. So that's how we got going. But once you have that, because the hardest event is the first event. You're trying to pitch an idea, which is exactly that. I knew that if we could get 1,000 people to the first event, get it recorded, all that jazz, when you go to people for the next event, you've got something to show them now. They don't know or care that you had that amount of people paying or not. So that's how we got it.
I totally agree. Please give Mark a hand. Do we have questions?
The question is mostly focused around for startup entrepreneurs. So what the general consensus is in order to get started up, it's not really what you know, it's who you know. Would you agree on that side of the kind of thought process to say you really need to have a good network in order to get into the marketplace? Or another school of thought that I came across on TED Talks actually was by a guy named Dan Locke that mentioned that you need to have a high-paying skill or a skill that other entrepreneurs would want to make use of as an entrant into the market. So would you agree with the notion of network or skill set, or a combination of the two in some regard?
Cool. Yeah, I can only speak subjectively. I think it's all of the above. What you know counts. There's actually a Japanese term that I love called ikigai. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. You definitely want to go do a little research about it. It's basically a four-pronged attack. That making your way through this world is about finding something that you love, that the world needs, that people are willing to pay for, and that you're good at. If you can bring those four things together, that's very powerful. On top of that, who you know does count, but if you don't know, like when I started Suits and Sneakers, I knew absolutely nothing in that space. So I knew nobody on that side. And in fairness, it's not even about me, just watching most people. You can build that network. But I mean, for you to succeed in the marketplace, I just love that ikigai term. It's not mine. You know, if you think about it, being passionate about something is vital. You'll hear a lot of people say, I bought into his energy. Yeah. Or I love this, I love the enthusiasm. Yeah. Okay, well, that's why some people get involved.
We always also hear people saying that they work with people that they like. We hear that a lot.
Sure.
And I read...
But people naturally like people that are purpose-led.
Yeah, and purpose-driven as well. I read on one of the interviews that you did that you used to go to the Hyatt and just... Can I talk about this?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, listen. Mark used to go to the Hyatt and just bring in highly successful entrepreneurs and just have a conversation with them. And people used to come in and pay, even though they didn't know you, and pay to listen to your interviews. You didn't know these guys. You invested in having, were they dinners or were they breakfast?
The breakfasts.
They were the breakfast. Why? Why did you do that? And why did you invest in that? What is it that drove you so much to a point that you were like, this is going to work. This is the journey I'm prepared to take.
Let me give you some context,
around that?
And I'll finish answering your question. Let me give you some context. So, if you can imagine this, I'm $1 million rand in debt. I start teaching a one-day social media workshop. It blows up because my timing is perfect. 2010, my timing was like epic. Yeah. Okay, no one else was doing it. This leads me to, I'll never forget how nervous I was teaching the first ever class. But I had a natural flair for standing up and talking. I quite enjoy it, and I turned out to be quite good, and I sat on the base of people kept coming back, which is how I would judge it. Once I did that, people would say to me, oh, well, I see that this is how you do it, so could you come do it for us? So they would spend 8 hours with me learning about social media, and indirectly it was an 8-hour pitch. I didn't do it like that, but that's what it turned into. They would get comfortable with you and they'd be like, okay, well, I could use this guy. He's pretty clued up. Who would you use, a random that you don't know or the guy that you just spend time with if he's making sense? Yeah. So I realized there was something in that. So I created this thing called the Inside Coca-Cola Book Review. The story was that I went from never traveling to traveling lots. I would read a book every time I got on a plane. I happened to catch this book called the Inside Coca-Cola. I loved it. And I came back home and I said to my dad, this is a great way of getting more clients for our marketing business. We run an event, we get people that we want there, we pay for their breakfast, and we share a point of view. In other words, we give something before we try to take it. We can build a relationship that way. So I put this whole presentation together around the Inside Coca-Cola Book Review to originally just bring 50 influential people in my industry together to kind of put myself on the map. I did it at the Hyatt because I thought that would create a line of credibility, and I paid for their breakfast
as well. Yeah.
So we invited guests. They didn't have to pay anything to come. On the last minute, my dad said to me, well, why don't we just market it? Put a small margin on it, and even if there's 3 or 4 people that come, then indirectly it pays for your cost. But then another 50 people came and paid. After that first event, someone came to me and said, we love this talk. Would you come do this at our business? I was like, of course. They were like, have you done this before? I was like, yeah, plenty. Never. Did it, and then every time I'd run the Inside Coca-Cola Book Review for payment, people would come to me afterwards and say, would you come talk at our business? Wow. And then people would say to me, is there anything else that you speak about? So that's how I got into public speaking by accident. But then what it resulted in is that this dude who the book was about, the CEO of Coca-Cola Worldwide, I made contact with him, and long story short, I managed to get him to come out to South Africa. And I ran a one-off event with him in Cape Town. So I realized that events were super powerful. Even if we made no money off those events, I would have carried on running them, because what it did was it was a gateway to it was marketing, it was advertising, and it was brand building.
Yeah, and the consistency as well. I see that happening. I see that assisting. I mean, obviously, if I come to you and pitch something, I have to sort of like prove that I can, and that can't be done by just giving you an idea and say this is my idea. If I have proof that I've done this before, a lot of people are more willing to buy into your story. And now I want to talk about, to add on what Dylan asked, the networks. You always talk about how, relationships are very important, and a lot of great things comes from small conversations. How do you nurture relationships, especially in a time where everyone seems to be connected, everyone seems to be busy, everyone seems to have stuff that you want? How do you nurture your relationships? Because we know you hang around with the most coolest people ever.
It's tough, okay, so to go back to answer the point, by the way, is if you look at the success of, you have to deem it a success. It was a financial success. It led to the creation of Suits and Sneakers. There was a lot to it. Was it creating the network? Absolutely. But the timing was intense. Clearly, what saved me was that every time I got on stage, I just let rip about what I believed in. People bought into that energy and that passion.
Yeah.
But it was still something that people were willing to pay for, because the market dictated that. We ran that thing for almost 2 years. I don't know, at 500-600 rand a pop, you do the math. It was probably about 4,000 or 5,000 people that came to that thing. So it was successful. So all of those things came together. The network, I believe that, without question, I believe that big things happen from small conversations. But the problem is that you don't know which conversations. So it's not really a thing to me. I don't like to go to networking events to quickly network and to catch up. In fact,
pick up people's brains.
I want to hear what your vibe is. I don't know who I'm meet. Sometimes you're going to come to an event and you're going to meet the most fascinating people.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're going to meet people and just what they do and what you do doesn't align. You don't align as people. It's all good. I guess it comes back down to the idea that I just love meeting people. I mean, that's innately built in me. So I always just know, I learned this from running nightclub events, that there's a whole bunch of tangible stuff that makes people successful and intangible stuff you can't touch. Being at events, being out there, energy, constantly, you don't know who you're going to meet. Yeah. And most of the good things that have happened to me, the Inside Coca-Cola Book Review, meeting Neville Isdell, I mean, I happened to bump into him at Sandton City after tracking him down for 3 months online. The serendipity of it and the synchronicity, but you don't know when and how. So you always, if you're an entrepreneur, that's part of the inertia that you have to develop, is that you always have to be out, you always have to be meeting new and interesting people, and you can't be doing it there to what can I grab from you? The final thing that I learned from this process was that in marketing, we just moved to a world where giving value before you try to take it made the most sense. So when we started Suits and Sneakers, we often run for 18 months, we ran all our events for free, barring the big one. Because my feeling was, I'll give you the event for free, and the learning on the night, but in exchange, we'll build a relationship with you, and you never know where that comes into effect. I mean, there's some interesting people sitting here, even in this crowd tonight, that were indirectly or directly responsible for things like sponsorship coming about, etc.,
Absolutely, yeah.
because of an event that I'll ended up inviting them to instead of trying to maximize the money from them. So, I mean, I've got a personal take on networking. I just get out there, get often. Obviously, it's got a double-edged sword, especially now with suits and sneakers. It's tough. It's tough to be...
Yeah.
More people from the events that we run know me than I know them.
Yes.
And it's tough. You only have so much capacity.
Yeah, and
People
you
are
can't
constantly
tell.
at you.
Yeah.
Can we meet up? Can we... I have 24 hours in the day. It's tough.
Yeah.
So some people will see you for rude. I don't know how to balance that. But, I mean, you've got to all do that. You just got to be out there. If you're not out there... It's like, so if someone calls me and says, would you do a talk for free? To give you a final anecdote. Last year I did 70 keynotes in 40 days for free. 70. It's almost 2 a day that I did at no cost. I had no clue that would turn into the record-breaking year for public speaking. Everybody saw me at an event. They saw me talk. They'd come to me later and say, listen, bro, don't you want to come talk at our conference? We'll pay you. But that wasn't, the initial aim was just to get on the map, to tell people, the corporate businesses, this is who we are and this is what we do and we want you involved. It's very hard. You see, you can't justify that time-wise. If you were working for a corporate, they'd be like, well, where's the return of the investment?
Yeah.
It's like, well, I don't know how to give that to you tangibly. I don't know how to tell you. I just know that someone's going to be sitting in there. So I did like in these 70 keynotes, one of them happened to be for KPMG, for Alexander Forbes, and for EOH. That, in the last calendar year, I didn't know, but at the time of doing those 3 talks, that single-handedly saved Suits and Sneakers last year when I lost R500,000 on an event that I wasn't supposed to lose. If it wasn't for those, I don't know if it would have come about another way, but those 3 free talks that I just happened to do by pure chance resulted in almost R1 million worth of work in the later part of the year, which set us up away from going bankrupt and building the online university that we've built. So how do you explain that to someone?
Yeah.
You can't.
Yeah, no, you can't.
But you have to be there doing those things. In fact, in about 3 weeks' time, I'm going on another speaking tour. 40 companies, 40 days. At no cost. Because it's the best way of saying to the world, hello, I'm here, I want to share, and I want to give you value.
Yes, yeah.
And no, there's no expect. In other words, don't do the talk and then great. Now that I've spoken, can you take out your... obviously, people will pick up on that really quickly.
Yeah, they do.
Can't do that.
Yeah, they do, yeah.
So I don't know which ones are going to be duds and which ones are going to be incredible, and I don't give a shit.
Wow. Amazing. Okay, I'm enjoying this. Okay, let's get a question from you. Do you have a microphone? Who has a microphone? Okay.
Is it working? Yes.
Your name
Okay,
and your
good.
question?
So, what I wanted to ask, do you mind if I sit? Does it matter if I stand?
You can stay.
Okay.
It's fine.
Do you want to tell
So,
people who you are?
Okay, I'm Natalie, and I've opened a high school using sort of the digital way forward and trying to change the system.
Wow.
It hasn't quite worked the way way I planned it, but I'm onto new adventures. So what I wanted to ask you was, it seems like you have a lot of faith in sort of, like you talk about serendipity, synchronicity, and all that kind of thing. And what I'm finding is the more I'm going into, because I'm opening a whole lot of little things here and there, or I'm doing a whole little things here and there, is that often when you network and you are faced with people who sort of are experts and that you want to learn from, it can create a sense of doubt, because you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so overwhelmed, there's so much that I actually don't know and I have so much still to learn. But when you compare yourself to the people who you're providing the service for, you actually know exactly what you're doing. So how did you overcome those sort of moments where you're, taking a chance and, okay, well, there's no social media course, what the heck, I'm going to go for it, that sort of bit of self-doubt sometimes, and just jumping in and going for it.
I just came back from London. I actually arrived yesterday morning. We launched Suits and Sneakers in London.
I must say, well done. When I saw that on LinkedIn, I was like, well, not that I didn't expect it, but I was just like, wow, Mark
Thank
is
you.
onto something great. Well done with that.
Oh, thank you. I want to tell you why I'm mentioning that. I'm not trying to name drop the thing.
No,
Is
we
that-
call them, at
Yes.
Startup Grind, we'll call them humble breaks. You're
I'll go with it.
yeah,
But
you're
there's a
allowed
lesson
to.
is that never stops.
You
by the way.
deserve you deserve it,
The doubt never stops. And so the doubt was initially, could this thing work? And if you're having people judge you on one event, that's not ideal. But so what the point of my story is that in London, I learned this again, that action cures fear. Every time, hands down. So you're going to find out, the market will tell you what's going on. And sometimes you're going to get it wrong, but then you're going to have to, That's the cliched story about that's why you have to get it wrong more than you have to get it right. When it started with the events, Suits and Sneakers, it was, I built this whole thing up, and then we ran the first event, and I actually was a little bit disappointed. But other people didn't have that expectation. So they were like, this is actually really good. But I felt we weren't there. We ran the second event, that was much better. But at every point in time, you run this thing, and you just have to go. There are days where you're going to walk away like highly disappointed. The thing was, you have to pick these key, I guess the corporate world calls it KPIs. You have to pick these measures. What is valuable to you? What will measure this as success? The beauty of owning your own thing is that you get to decide your own metric. For me was, will more people come to the event than before? Also, will more people watch the online videos than before? Because I guess that's a good measure. Like, are we going forward or are we going backward? But what I also found is that sometimes you can't measure it in like micro perspective. You have to look at it over the year or two. So that was one. And then as it's carried on, now we're building an online university where we're telling, I guess, formal institutions that they've got it wrong. And they don't think so, or they can't really admit that. But again, we've built a membership program. So the question is, do members buy in? Then do they stick? Do they stay with you? Do you have more members this month than last month? And then with like London, I just learned again, we were trying to organize an international event from South Africa. We picked a date. That was the only date I could have my friend John Sane speak there. I didn't want to launch the event myself. I wanted to have another speaker launch it with me. So we picked a date. We hoped that we would find a free venue. Everybody told me this was never going to happen. The experts are out in droves. John says it best. It is the least courageous thing to do is to be pessimistic. It's the easiest thing to do. It's the easiest thing to say, to hear you say, listen, I'm going to do this with fashion, and then I say to you, I don't know if it's going to work. How easy. Like, to hell with that. Also note that some people are telling you it's not going to work because they're trying to actually help you. Take cognizance of it. But if you've got it in your head, like, you can only go on what you know. But the consistency, if you think about events, Suits and Sneakers, there's nothing really special to running events. There's a low barrier to entry. And lots of people do start events. What I've seen in 3 years is many people start, not many people are still around. So people that were running events 3 years ago, I'm not saying in an ugly way, I don't really see them.
Yeah, that's true.
People who are doing, I don't really see them. So the thing that's probably dragged it, to answer your question, we only worked out our business model 6 months ago. It took 3 years of mucking about, losing money, getting it right, getting it wrong. And then 6 months ago, I was like, see, this could make sense.
Yeah.
And now it looks figured out.
Yes.
To the masses, social media again. London. I've literally, in the last 6 weeks, I've been Australia, New Zealand, London, and all around the country. So if you post that on social media, everybody's like, oh my God, this guy's killing it. No, we worked it out 6 months ago, and we still live hand to mouth because we're building a whole tech platform. But let them think that. That's cool.
Yeah.
But how do you do it?
Fake it till you make it.
Fake it till you make it, but consistently. Action cures fear.
At some point you have to make it, hey?
If you listen to, I've been to a ton of these startup grounds in general. You listen to all the lessons that people put out. I love this saying. It's simple, it's not obvious. The best advice in the world is simple. It's not obvious to people. It's like for example, look at the world. Is it easy or difficult to work out how to be in shape and fit and look good? No. Eat less, train hard, and everybody should be fit. Simple. It's simple how to look like an absolute god. It's not obvious. Otherwise, everybody would be doing it. But actually, it's a zero-sum game. It's easy to get to that place. You want to look good? This is what you have to do. It's just not that easy to do. And so I think most of the best advice is that. The best advice is, if I've learned, is that I've got this idea in my head. I don't want to sell more shit cheese. This is all I want to do with my life. I want to solve a big problem. And so to Simon Sinek's point, if you know why you're doing what you're doing, it's a lot easier to get yourself through that really difficult time. And if you have half a brain and you pick good metrics, the market will tell you, you're doing this right, you're doing this wrong.
Wow, thank you.
Please keep it as brief as you can because we ran out of time. Charlie? Yes, you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Charlie Monsignor. As a networker, I've heard the questions being asked, it's not who, it's everybody saying, who knows you? And you made it quite clear that you've got to put yourself out there. And then people get to know you. My question is, when you're networking, what's the first question you would actually ask somebody?
Yeah, when I'm typically meeting people, and so the question I always like to ask is what people do, but more importantly, like, the biggest question I find, the biggest hesitation toward is, do you enjoy what you do? That spawns a whole conversation. It's very interesting what you see. And if someone says, if you say like, okay, cool, so I'm doing Rebeth wines, and how's it going? Cool. So do you love it? And I swear to God, if they can't answer like almost immediately, if you can see that hesitation, I'm like, so I'm just curious, like I'm not picking at you, I'm just curious like why the hesitation, or where's your head at, or... And that, you know, Cal Fussman is a dude that I brought out. He was teaching me about asking really good questions. If you can get people to open up on a personal level. But the truth is that I'm not asking to create some superficial, I hope we can get to know each other. I'm curious, do you love it? Because I love resonating with people. I resonate, should I say, with people who are like, I love what I do. And when people aren't like that, my mission is to help them get to a place that they're like, I love what I do.
Better be
So
a
if I
hell
can just
yeah.
have that conversation, the rest of it flows quite easily.
So would you say it's not the amount of questions you ask a person, it's the quality of questions you ask that person?
Without question. Cal Fussman says, he says he likes to ask me, why is your best friend your best friend? Then they have to sit there and think about it. They have to come up with a good answer. Definitely not the amount of questions. And I guess if you were very serious about network, you'd probably want to ask more questions than you answer.
Just on that, you travel all over the world, meeting a lot of amazing people. A lot of them are obviously entrepreneurs. What is it that we are not getting in South Africa that you witness all over the world? That if we could do that one thing, we could be, you know, global. We could be we could compete in a global space.
Yeah. I think, you know, I'm biased. I think it comes back to education. It really comes back to that for me. If you go look at places, I just came back from Australia. You want the most equal society in the universe. Go spend some time in Sydney, where whether you're a cleaner or whether you're a high-paying CEO, you all live good lives. And that doesn't happen by accident. South Africa is built on cheap labor. The sooner we accept that, we understand that. For example, I was in Australia and every meal was expensive. It's expensive even for Australians to eat out. But of course it is, because everybody has to earn something along the line of the value chain. But not here. I can go open up a takeaway joint, put my R1 million in, pay all of the kitchen staff $3,000, and I can make 100. Our value system's totally broken. We don't think we pay for that inequality, but we do. Inequality is, in my opinion, the biggest prohibitor to us moving forward to becoming a first world country. And the way we try to go about creating equality is equally broken, because we constantly just try to take from the haves to give to the have-nots. So 55 million South Africans, realistically 8 million economically active, but realistically, really 4-5 million strong tax base. We're trying to fund an entire nation from 10% of the country. And then we've got the short-term thing. So corporates have it. It's like, we'll give the fish instead of teaching them how to fish. And this is why I'm so obsessed with this education idea, because equally, we've got this double conundrum, is that we can't also just go back and suddenly give triple minimum wage, pay a much higher amount, but for the same skill set. So we have to teach the have-nots how to add to the economy in a meaningful way so that they can contribute to the economy, so that they can start earning the money in a realistic way, which is why I've been both for and against BEE. In the short term, it makes all the sense in the world to do it, but we missed this gap. If you really look at it, if we were to be honest about all programs that we use to create equality, has it? If that's your only measure, not I'm white and you're black, we say, has it created more equality? Not has it enriched small groups of people in a big way. So you look at these countries, it's education. Because if I could take someone from the side of the road, give them a skill set that is valuable, automatically free will principles apply. If this person's got a skill set that's valuable, I'm automatically willing to pay him. Then there's a case of supply and demand, and the better he is, the more I'm willing to pay him to have me work there. That's why not all accountants are paid the same, or speakers are paid the same. So the bigger the value of the problem you solve, that's what education is to me about. It's about taking the masses and giving them the ability to solve a bigger problem so that they can participate in the economy in a bigger way, so that we can have more equality. by the way, a South African thing to do is twofold. We oftentimes try get ourselves on the same level by bringing those who are up there down. It's a mess. No one wins this way. And then second of all, if I were to say the one interesting thing I learned from New York, running events on small ends, speaking around the world, New York, London, Australia, New Zealand, is that we suffer from South Africanism. We always think that what we do, when we do it well, isn't good enough. I kept thinking like, everybody tells me that this message, that South Africa is a very different kettle of fish to New York or London, so you've got to change your narrative, and it is true. You can't just take the same narrative and go to the same places. But like, they almost had me believe that if I go there and I shared my message, that it's going to fall on deaf ears and no one's going to listen because they're up there and we're here. And then I got there and I did the different talks that I did, and they all looked at me like this. Just the way it happens if you do your job really well as a public speaker, you shift someone's perspective, they look at you like, okay, I didn't see that coming. That happened not only to me, but to like someone like my friend John, New York, London, Australia, New Zealand. They all looked up. And I was like, I don't know why we suffer from this delusional lack of self-belief. So everything I can encompass, and that's why I think it's every one of our, like whoever's sitting here tonight, the job that we have is to create equality by enabling the masses to participate. That's education. That's what we're missing.
Oh, amazing. Super amazing. One last question before we wrap up. Yes.
Sorry, I just want to understand. Can you tell me what Suits and Sneakers does? Can you like pitch it to just give me a picture?
Sure, I've got a short version for you. We do 3 or 4 different things, but this will help you explain it. We make revenue in the following ways. 1, we help businesses and staff be better prepared for the future. In other words, we go into companies and we help reorganize or revolutionize their learning programs in the workplace. My thinking is that when we think about the people who need education, we think of it as young people, but it's not just that. It's that the future is coming at us at exponential pace. So we don't really have all the answers as to what's to come, so we have to be prepared. And the people who need to be the most prepared are people in companies, because they are driving the wheels of this economy. So we help companies better prepare their learning structures. That's 1. 2, we help individuals. We've got different target markets. So we do the same thing for individuals. So right now we run a corporate membership program. Companies become members. They pay for membership for their company. And on top of that, we go into their companies and help fix their learning programs. But then individuals become members of Suits and Sneakers now. That's to the point of the new business model. Only now do we have a membership program because we have enough value to offer. Our membership program is like a school, a reimagined school for adults. Picture an event like this, but it's different every week, but it's every week, and then we combine it with our online university. You are constantly mixing between face-to-face online, and it's a continuous curriculum that never ends across all topics. If you stuck with us for a year, much like the 90-day TED Talk challenge, you would have a much wider knowledge. But 3, our ultimate legacy is this. We do want to fix education in the workplace and for individuals, but we ultimately are social entrepreneurs. So we want to create a product and a service that's valuable enough that companies pay exorbitant amounts of money for. We deliver on that service, and in exchange, we take that money, build a reimagined schooling system from the ground up for young people who need it the most but can't afford it, and we give it to them for free. So Suits and Sneakers is different things to different people, why it's confusing. To McCain, they've just taken a corporate membership. We are providing them a service. I'm actually coming in with a team and helping them reimagine their learning processes from the ground up, and they're using our system. To individuals, they will come to a Suits and Sneakers weekly event, and they'll use our online university. But ultimately, to young people, we will be the people that give them quality education at no cost, funded by the people who do need it but can afford it.
Sorry. As a follow-up to that question, and I'm sorry if this sounds cheeky, but so what qualifies you to do that?
What qualifies?
Yes.
Yeah. So nothing qualifies me, absolutely nothing. It's that I believe that we would be better if we have this. I don't see government fixing it. They're a slow, and I'm not just talking about the ANC. I'm talking about governments around the world. They are these big blimps in a world where you need to be tiny little nimble entities. They don't have a clue of what's coming. They're not going to do it. Unfortunately, the corporate sector, by and large, isn't going to do it. Because Nando's, God bless them, I love them, their job isn't to fix education. Their job is to sell more chicken. That's when push comes to shove, their priority is always going to push to sell more chicken, not fix education. They're capitalistic. So we think the only way is to create and inspire other creators of organizations who fix it from the inside out. By the way, the interesting thing to me is if you can build something from nothing and people will follow you, what qualifies me is the market is qualifying me at this point in time. The irony is that a guy with no matric keeps getting called into businesses to fix their education systems because the apparent systems that are meant to work aren't.
Wow.
You're like, does that make sense?
I think the reason I ask what qualifies you is, if we're going to maybe start events, the first thing you ask yourself is, whoever's in the audience, are they going to be like, where's your qualification to talk on this particular subject?
Sure.
So
and it's a good question. I understand. So my basis is quite simple, is that I've spent the way the world currently measures education, I'm not very well educated. I don't have a matric. I think I'm one of the most educated people I know. You want to know why? My routine does not get messed with. When I go to gym in the mornings, it's podcast rather than nothing. I don't listen to the radio, I podcast. I don't have DSTV in my house. I watch YouTube and I put TED Talks. My entire life is built around educating myself and helping others do the same. I'm highly educated in the sense and the amount of time that I take to understand these problems. Now I'm building a system that can measure that, can measure both formal and informal education, which is the only reason formal education exists. Because in the old days, how did you know that one was more qualified than the other? This piece of paper says so. Now we're learning that that's not indeed a great metric. That this piece of paper doesn't automatically tell you what this person's value is. What they do with minute-by-minute decisions of their day does. The problem is we don't have a system today that I can't show you up until my own system. I can't tell you how much time I've spent podcasting. I can't share this. So absolutely, I say to people, I'll go one-on-one with anybody to explain what the problems are. The irony of what qualifies me is that they pay me to come and speak, not the other way around. Now we've got thousands of people who come to the event, and the market has kind of said, well, no. The stuff that's because by the way, if you come to any suits and sneakers event, I'm not the main speaker at almost 90% of the events. Yeah. It's always someone else. So they're not even going, we agree with Mark and what he said on that. We're saying we agree with all these guys. This is a great form of education. But I mean, to be honest, to final end it, I don't care. I want to solve a big problem. I know that that's absolutely what I'm built to do. I make less money today than I made 3 years ago. I bring home less money than I made 3 years ago. I turn more money than ever. We're building something. And in 50 years' time, when we take cathedral thinking into account, when we play a long game, no one will argue, not with my methodology, with, hold on, this made sense.
Wow. Okay, we ran out of time. My last question for you is, what is your cry for South African entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I think that we don't, I'm going to say this loosely and I'm generalizing, so go with me. I don't think we all support each other enough. I think we do in that we're there for each other, but we still don't have this community thing quite waxed down. For example, one of the things I've always tried to do as an entrepreneur is always support the smaller guy than the bigger guy. And this is not about anti the big guy. This is about they've got enough. Pick and Pay has enough. Let's find the smaller grocer. Let's find I think if we all just, even the people in this room, let's say there's 50 odd people here. If everybody just went home and said, okay, in the next week, one of my 5 purchases will be centered around supporting the smaller guy than the bigger guy. And even if that smaller guy doesn't get it right, supporting him anyway because that's his learning curve. Now that takes a lot to do that because it's not natural to how we do it. But then also I think that we're all responsible for our own education. I think that you can only help people on the basis of what you know and what you are able to. That's why I've never wanted to be an NGO, by the way. I want to solve the problem here capitalistically so that it's sustainable, so that I'm not looking for handouts. Yeah. Because if I can solve a solution for corporates and we're making millions of rands here, I have millions of rands to fix the problem down here, not dependent on someone who may or may not give that money tomorrow. Yeah. So I think we just give those things a thought. So I want to just put a challenge to all of you, is that this online university is free for you to actually go register at. All you literally have to do is go to SUITSAND sneakers, so suits and sneakers.university. Register at no cost. And start using it to go through. In other words, if you've got any value, not from me tonight, but the value of being here tonight and talking to each other, then don't go home and leave it there. Because that's when it's broken. We come to an event once a month, we get a little bit of learning, but are we different next week, better next week? No. The learning has to be everyday, continuous streams of learning. And if you're doing that, if you're able to equip yourself to solve a bigger problem, you're automatically in a better position to support others. So it's really a multi-pronged thing. But we have to absolutely, we're a small group of entrepreneurs, so we absolutely have to stick together in ways that make no logical sense to the outside world, but it makes all the sense to us.
Wow, guys. Wow. Okay. Thank you so much, Mark. Thank you so much for joining us. I thoroughly enjoyed it. You know you inspire me. And I think this was one of my favorite, I know I'm not supposed to say this, but this was actually one of my favorite fireside chats ever. And listen, I wish you all the best. We're still going to come to your events. We're still going to support you at Suits and Sneakers. And all the best with everything. With Impala, we love the space. It's beautiful. Well done for creating such a beautiful space where entrepreneurs come together. We know your conviction and you stand up for it. And we really, really believe you can actually go far. And thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, guys. Thank you for coming tonight. I appreciate it.